The American Beauty Tim uses was made by Robust Tools. All our lathes have a 7-year warranty. Our tool wrists feature a hardened rod on top. Lots of sizes to fit your lathe. Robust, because the making matters.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner, for wood turners. This time on Wood Turning, we're going to do a really cool project, and it all came about because I was at SWAT, which is a Texas Turning Symposium. It's huge, lots of people there, and one of those people there was Carl Jacobson. If you've been on YouTube and you're a wood turner, you know who he is. And so we got to talking about, we would like to do a project that we were doing each the same project but different way. And so we started talking about Beads of Courage. It's a wonderful organization that helps children who have illnesses like cancer and such. What they do is they take glass beads, and the children are awarded a bead for every time they go through a procedure or something like that. It really helps their emotional status, standing and things like that. They get happy. It also brings arts into the hospital, and it makes the whole process for them a lot easier to handle. Well, we're not glass makers, so wood turners wanted to get involved. Well, these kids can wind up with hundreds, even thousands of beads. So where do they put them? That's where we come in. We can make wooden boxes for Beads of Courage, which is a really cool thing. Now, there's going to be information down in the comments section where I can send you all the links for Beads of Courage and things of that nature, because they have some specifications on dimensions and stuff like that, which will help talk you through the process. Also, you can buy a kit which gives you these little cool Beads of Courage, and the idea is that you can include these in your design. You also get cards with it, and you can put your name and who made it, and that way when this is gifted to a child, they know who made this box for them. It's a nice way of personalizing it. Really cool process, and I think it's a wonderful non-profit organization that we all should help support. Now, I have seen lots of beads boxes that were like bears and things like that, cutesies and rabbits, and I thought, well, there's got to be some little guys and girls out there who also are into sports. So our box today is going to be a football. I think this is a really fun project because it involves actually gluing up wood and doing some hollowing and some things like that. We're also doing some lacing, and this is all grain matched. You can see it looks perfect all the way through, so that's really cool. And I've got a little release here so we can lift it up. I have to trim off the rest of the leather in there because I just laced it this morning, but there's the box on the inside. So this is going to be a lot of fun to make. Now, to get a piece of wood big enough to make this, you know, if it's a single piece, it could cost you $100 or more, and you don't want to go through that. So I'm actually using a big board, 2-inch thick, 6-inch wide walnut. And I went over to the bandsaw and I cut the walnut into 3 pieces that were 11 to 11.5 inches long. I'm dealing with a 6-inch width because then the next step that I went to was over to my joiner, and I wanted to clean up the sides. Now, my joiner's only 6 inches wide, so that's why I'm limited to that. If you want to make a full-size football, you can. You just have to have a bigger planer or joiner to make the smooth edges, because when you look at this board right here, it has a plain side, which is really great. But what I'm going to wind up with is 2 plain sides, so I put the first ones together, and this side isn't plain, so I have to plane at least the middle one. And that's the way I went about it. Now, once you do plane it, you have to glue all this up, and I use Tight Bond glue, and you really make sure you get the glue coverage on the wood really good, smear it all around, and then you clamp it, and then you leave it for 24 hours. And once you have done that, you wind up with a blank that looks something like this. And so now, instead of having to spend $100 for a big block of wood that's 6 by 6 by 11 or so, this actually cost me about $20. So I can take this back to the bandsaw and nip these edges off to make this a little bit rounder and easier to turn, but I found out by the time I set up my bandsaw and do all that, I could easily just do that on the lathe, and that's where we're going next. And I've been roughing this out for a few minutes, probably about 2 or 3, and getting really, really close. Just move my body to the side. This doesn't have to be perfectly rounded out right now because we're just trying to get some wood out of the way. And that's perfectly rounded out. Okay, we went ahead and did that. Gonna bring this over here because I want to take a parting tool and clean up this end. We're gonna wind up, excuse me. I had this on because this is a glue up, and if it blows up, it's gonna do it while you're doing this part. I can see my seams are perfect right now, so I'm not gonna worry about that from now on. I'll just go ahead and use regular Googles at that point. But anyway, I need to put a tenon on this end and on this end because when we part this in half, we're going to have to be able to mount the box part and the lid part into a chuck to do the rest of the turning. So anyway, I want to get my parting tool right here. We're going to clean up this end, and I'm going to make a tenon on here. Let me clean this up and I'll show you my technique for that because I need a flat surface to start with. You ride the bevel of the parting tool. You actually kind of push up and let it ride in, and then it rides down as it goes. If you push it straight in, you're going to dull your tool right off the bat. And I don't want to waste a lot of wood, I just want to clean it. That looks pretty good. Now, every chuck jaw sets that you have different widths and stuff. So I always mark mine this way. That 3.5 inch means that I need a 3.5 inch tenon. That's as small as I can go to make a tenon that fits in here. This is 4.25. That is the smallest recess I can make that this will expand into. So it's an easy, quick reference. And under these shavings somewhere, I have my calipers right here. And I've got one end of these is sharp. That's the sharp end, that's the dull end. This is just in case. So I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna touch one edge, and you can see that line up here, and you can see the tip is not quite to it. So there we go, a little bit more. Okay, that's the width of the tenon I want to make. So by doing that, I can quickly make a tenon. Now we're going to get a parting tool once again, and we're just going to go basically one width of the parting tool, and then a half width. That gives me like 3/8 of an inch, or something like that. Maybe a quarter. So there we go. Come back one more. If I make the tenon too deep, it won't fit in the chuck right. I'm going to make that a little bigger. And now I'm going to grab my one specialty tool, which a lot of you are familiar with, and that is my angled tool. It's an old Bedan that I put an angle on so I can just come in and nibble away and make the perfect tenon shape. And undercut it just a little bit so it rides on the edge of the tool jaws. Okay, I'm going to make a tenon on the other end, and then we're going to start doing some rough shaping of the blank. Now I'm marking the center of my blank right now, and we have a tenon on each end. My next step is to slowly start roughing this out. This is going to be the bottom of the box. This is going to be the top up here, so we'll probably want, excuse me, parting the top off somewhere right in here. But I wanted the middle mark so I can start being symmetrical on doing my roughing out. The way I'm doing it has turned out really well. Is I found a official NFL football online, and I printed it out, and it turns out it relates really well to this size. So to give you an idea here, Brian can show you. You can see the top of the crown over the wood. Well, basically, I'm going to keep turning the wood, holding this down to where I can see it until I start revealing the edge. Now, I want to leave it a little fat because since I part off the lid, I'm going to lose some wood, and I don't want to make it exact size because then it'll have to get smaller. Also, being NFL, you notice our football over here is NFL. It's not college, which has white stripes on the college. So that's why we didn't do that. Now, the Beads of Courage people recommend that you don't use paint. They prefer to see the wood, and these children are ill. Paint's pretty safe nowadays, so I'm pretty sure that if you do paint something, it's not going to be horribly wrong. And it's something that the children will enjoy too. But I went ahead and just went with straight wood, and we used some leather laces. Now, like I said, our buddy Carl Jacobson is going to do a project, and once he posts that, I'll go ahead and put the link to that in our comments section also, so you can go see what he did. Now, this is just like one ginormous bead. So I'm using my 1/2-inch spindle gouge, and I'm just roughing out the wood. If your cut stops, just lift up and come back again if you take too much wood. And the only reason that skips off is I turn the heel away, so I just gotta make sure I keep the point into the wood and move my body. So I can do this for a little bit without even having to look at the football. But one thing I don't want to get into too much is as I turn this is going to be the big end with the big tenon. I don't want to take any more of that shelf away because I need that stability for when I hollow. So what I'll do is I'll probably do some cuts that come in and start stopping about right here. So I'm going to start referencing my football here in a second and keep roughing this out. And once I have it roughed out, we're going to part the top off. And I'm just making a mark here where I want the lid to be. I've roughly shaped this. This isn't even close, but this diameter is probably within about 1/4 of an inch what I'm going to wind up with for my finished diameter. So this is going to help me make my cuts right now. And the way I actually got that measurement was I took my football and took diameters off it and transferred them over to here. This is actually working out to be pretty much life-size to what we're doing. Pretty cool. Anyway, I'm going to take my really fine parting tool here and make these cuts. Now on my lid, we're going to put a tenon on it to fit inside the box. So I want to be very careful about this cut here because I'm going to go in, going to make a relief cut, come to the side so I don't catch the tool. And I'd say my tenon needs to be about that long, so I'm going to make one more cut. The reason I'm using the thin parting tool is so I don't waste a lot of wood. I'm going to come back, and that's about the depth I need. I think I want to go a little deeper. I'm trying to make the tenon probably to where I have about a 1/2-inch wall. You want to make sure, I would err on the side of caution, make the tenon too far in rather than too far out because it'll go out the side of the wood if you don't make it in enough, if that makes any sense. So that looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to now try to start parting in. And I'm going to take my time on this because I don't want to get a catch. Oops, like that. Because this little bitty parting tool doesn't have a lot of strength. It has a lot of flex to it. But I don't want to lose a lot of wood in this process either, so that's why I'm taking my time. And I'm not going to part it all the way off because that'd be kind of like suicide, because that would really fly across the room. So I'm going to go down to a certain point. Once I get to that point, then I'm going to take my little pull saw and cut the rest off. I've turned my light on now because I wanted to make sure when I'm looking at this flat surface right here and my rim, I want to make sure that there's no tear out, that everything looks really good because I don't want to sand that. That's just going to be a part that's going to have to fit as it is, so it looks like it's got a really beautiful tool finish on it. But what I want to do now is I want to hollow this out and dish it out just a little bit just to give it a something, you know, so when you open it up it's a little lighter. So I'm taking a bowl gouge and I'm just going in like I would do a bowl because this is end grain. So I'll just start working it back a bit at a time now. I do want to make sure right here that I'm nice and clean on this edge. There we go. Come back in again. Okay. Come back in, start cleaning this out again. I don't want to make this really fragile because it's obviously a football. So somebody might get a little enthusiastic with it and drop it a couple times. So I'm going to make it stout enough it can handle a little activity. So here I go. I'm just taking some of the weight out. That's all I'm doing. If you want to do something special up on the top to surprise them, that's okay. I had made a little design on the lid on the other box that actually took advantage of the shape of the tool. I'll show you that real quick here. Oh, let me lift that off. What I did is I just put a dimple in there like so, so I had a little design in there. I'm going to make this one smooth, and I'm going to use a scraper to clean up on the inside. That way I can take out a little bit more wood, make it a little bit lighter, be nice and clean. looking pretty good. One more pass. And I'll take a scraper to it if I need it. Now at this point is when you're going to want to sand the inside of the lid here. And we'll see what our tool finish looks like. Oh, that's easy to sand right there. That's beautiful. So I can just go ahead and sand that. Once it's sanded, we're going to start working on the box and start working on fitting the lid and hollowing. Now I reversed the box. Well, actually I put the box in the chuck, took the lid off, and I hollowed the center out just like I did the top of the box, and I've been slowly working my way in on this tenon. I took the diameter just like I did for doing my tenons, and that's pretty good. You don't want a jam fit on here, because once you start putting finish and everything on here, it'll make it tighter. If it gets tight, then that child, when they lift the box lid off, they're going to have to struggle with it, and you don't want that. That'd be a big problem. Well, part of their recommendations is that the boxes be 6 inches wide, 5 inches deep. And in this case, I have to go with their minimums, which are 5 inches wide and 4 inches deep because of the shape of the football. So what I want to do is to hollow this out. I know if I get around to the shank here on this big Forstner bit, I'm about 4.5 inches deep. So that's plenty of room to hold all of those beads. So we're going to bring this up here. I got my Jacobs chuck mounted, got my big old Forstner bit in there. We're going to slow the speed way down, and we'll start drilling this. And after we have the drilling done, then we can actually start doing some hollowing. Now I've hooked up my hollowing system. This is the elbow tool, which I sell, and you can find out more about that on my website. But anyway, it hooks to the tailstock of your lathe. Very simple clamp. It takes 30 seconds to set this up the second time you do it. And then it has these articulating arms which help you make very delicate and very easy movements while you're hollowing. Then over here we have a laser system that's attached to the bar. It runs down here, and you can see I have it on. I'm going for a safe wide wall. Basically, when this light drops off the edge of the wood, I know where my cutting tip is. I know that I have that much thickness left on the wall as I'm hollowing. By the way, this cutter right here is made by Mike Hunter. It's called the Hunter tool. It's a number 2. It's at an angle. It's a carbide, but it's a scooped out carbide, so it cuts. It's very, very sharp. I could normally use my normal scraper I put in here, but with dried wood, this cuts like butter. This thing is awesome. Well, it cuts anything like butter. I really like it a lot. You can also find those on the website too. But anyway, let's get into hollowing here. And I love hollowing. It is a great, fun thing to do. Grab another pair of goggles. You want to have your speed down a little bit in the start. See where you are, see how everything's holding together. So I'm going to bring it up a bit now. Okay, now I've got to move into here. One technique I'll show you is my elbow here. I want to take my elbow and actually lay it down on the elbow. So now I'm relaxed, I have a great positioning, and I have good control of what I'm doing. So when it comes up here to the cutter now, my hand is working just as a pivot point, and I have this thing which does the elbow work. So come in, just make a little cut. You get a little vibration. If you take too much cut, you just back off a little bit. And you just want to take little sections out. It's kind of like hollowing out a bowl. You do a little bit at a time. Because with hollowing, where people get into trouble is when they hurry. And if you hurry, that's when you try to take too big of a cut and you get too big of a catch. I guess any catch could be too big, but you can get some really dandies with this. So anyway, I'm going to work on this for a little bit. And once we get it hollowed out, we'll smooth the inside so it's nice and smooth by taking some final passing cuts. And I just want to make sure that as I go, like I said, I just take small cuts. I don't rush it. And I just keep working back and forth. It's very handy because I don't know if any of you have used the old handled scrapers and things, but you're out here riding a bar like that and it's shaking. You're basically the tailstock. You're trying to provide all the support. Nothing's going to beat this tailstock. The whole idea is this thing's keeping this thing from flipping over, and it just makes it a pleasure to hollow rather than a big battle. It'll give me probably about 3 or 4 minutes and I'll have this thing hollowed out. Now one thing I forgot to mention is I'm hollowing here. Remember, it's a football shape. So you actually want to make the inside a little conical because you don't want to make it a tube or you'll have the sides coming out when you shape it here in a minute. You can use this tool back and forth, smooth it out really nice, looking good. Won't need much sandpaper at all when we're done. But anyway, you can see I'm getting close to the bottom. I'm just going to keep moving the wood out of the way. And once I have this done, then we're going to put it back together between centers and start shaping the ball. Okay, now that we're done hollowing, I'm putting this back between centers using the same marks I had from the live and drive centers. Don't want any dust between there. So I'll put these together. You can see I'm matching up my grain pattern. And then I'm going to bring the tailstock up and then put this back in to where it was before. If I can hit the hole just right. I think that's it. Let's see, that looks good. And you can see now, see the bump here? That's where we lost the diameter when we pared this off. That's why I was saying you want to save as much wood as possible. Also, you don't want to make the shape right away because if we'd made it the shape, we would have lost it. It would have been smaller. It would have been a big mess. Because you know with wood, you can't put wood back on. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take my big spindle gouge and I'm going to slowly start shaping this again. And I'm going to keep referring back to my football picture to make sure that I have the right profile going along right there. And remember, this is hollow, so don't take too many big cuts and don't make it any smaller than you need to, or you're going to have a really neat funnel. Okay, let's get going on this. I think I'm about there. I've been working really hard on looking at that little football picture and seeing if I got my silhouette right. And so what I'm doing now is I'm nibbling away the tendons I had on there because I need access in here to sand, and also this will give me room that I can then do some carving to put the quadrants on because the football's made of 4 pieces of leather. So anyway, that's looking pretty good. Let me do this, see if this works. You can see my silhouette. I think I got pretty close. I had to move my center line over a little bit, but I think that's working good. So anyway, I'm going to sand this, avoid the pain of watching that, and then we're going to start doing a little carving. Now what I'm doing is I'm using the indexing jig on my robust lathe here to make 4 quadrant drawings and checking my numbers to make sure I'm right. And that just holds me in place there. One thing I love about robust, I mean, Brent designs a lot of neat stuff, but apparently he made a football shaped tool rest. I think that is like the bee's knees. I probably should use that when I was roughing it out. But what it allows me to do really easily is take my pencil here and just run it now. And I've got my perfect mark on there. So the next thing we're going to do is to actually carve the marks on here that are for the bladder, or the 4 pieces of leather that go together. So I'm going to lock this back in place so I can have a little more strength with it. And I'm making Brian dance around the lathe today. But anyway, this is called a microplane. It's really neat. It looks like a cheese grater, but it works great for wood, and you can see it has a triangular shape to it. So that's going to help me out a lot, because over here, I'm going to start this out this way. I'm going to take the microplane right on that line and just very gently move forward, and it's going to start to cut. And as long as I stay on my line, I'm going to make a nice little etch mark. So now I've got a groove right here. So once I have that groove, it's a little bit easier to come back and keep going like so. And this is how I make the mark for the seam for the football. Now, since this is side grain going to end grain, I have to work from this high point and come down like so. So if I want to do this side, I have to turn this way and become left-handed, which is scary to me. And very lightly follow that and make another mark. If you have a little bit of wiggle in there, who cares? It's nice. And actually, I figured out this is going to be the front of my football, so it's going to have lacing here, so you won't see this line as much. But anyway, I've got 4 of these to do. And once I have them done, I do want to sand them down a bit. And I want to show you something really cool I found out. Let me grab a piece of sandpaper here. Alan Lacer makes a really neat diamond hone that I use all the time when I'm sharpening or touching up my tools. It's really nice. It's like 600 grit of metal. That radius right there turned out to be perfect for wrapping the sandpaper around it, and then taking this and running it down that groove I make. Once I get the groove a little bit wider, I can sand it down then so it looks nice and finished. But anyway, I got 4 of those to go, and then I'm going to drill some holes and we're going to show you how to put the laces in this thing. Now I've drawn out 12 holes for laces. I had to kind of go away from what the NFL does because they put a lot of laces on there. The big problem I had was I'm going to drill holes here, but I couldn't find football lacing anywhere. Wilson sells a bladder replacement kit that comes with laces, but other than that, nada. I couldn't find a thing. And then I found, this is called from the Highland group. They actually sell webbing and lacing that goes onto your baseball gloves. This turned out to be perfect, and this is just a few bucks off Amazon. I'll put the link in the comments as always. But it was great. 2 6-foot links, so I can make 3 or 4 of these footballs with just this stuff. But anyway, I'm going to grab my drill right now, and make sure you've hollowed deep enough so when you start drilling these holes, they go all the way through. And I'm using a brad point bit, so it goes right into my little awl shape there. And there we go. And it went through. Good. That's a good sign. Remember, we had to curve it on the inside, so it makes a nice thick wall there. The thicker the wall is at the bottom, the more weight it gives it, so this thing won't topple over when it's in place. Also, keep in mind, kids are going to be using this, so the more impervious you can make it to damage, the better. So when I put the lacing in, I'm going to tie it real tight. I'll show you that in a bit. But just things to keep in mind. Anyway, I'm going to drill these out. And then the next step I have to do, and I'll do it off camera so I won't waste your time with it, I got to nip these ends off and finish that carving to the tip. And once I get that done, I'll show you how we do the lacing. I'm just about finished carving all the seams. That looks pretty good. If you notice, I have a little friend over here. That is a handle because it's a little knot on a piece of leather. This is actually left over from a project we did, which were some little mice. It worked out good. I got this over at Michael's. But the thing is, this thing is so slick, there's no way to pick it up off of here, so you need a lace to be able to grab it and pull it off. So that's what that whole purpose serves. One thing I thought was really cool is Beads of Courage gives you a bunch of beads when you do your Turner's donation kit. And I'm going to go back and drill holes in these lids and insert these inside and put them in as nice little surprises. But anyway, let's get back to the lacing because that can be a little complicated. I can't lace this like a normal football. There's just not enough room and it doubles up. It's really kind of complicated. So anyway, I have a lace inside with a knot on it, right? So when I pull it, it doesn't come out. And so I'm going to take this and then push it inside. And you have to kind of twist it to get it to go in, but if every way you twist left, twist right, because you don't want to start getting it all wadded up on itself. And let's see if I can get this to go in. They have a needle they supply you with this, but that's for stringing a glove up, and it doesn't work in this condition because the needle's too long to go inside. Here we go, I'm going to pull this through. Now, if you notice, all laces have another lace going up the middle, so what you have to do is you take a piece of lace, measure it to where it goes from circles at the end, holes at the end of the holes at that end, pull it tight, now it's on it. So each time I lace, I'm going to lace on top of that so it'll look like the normal lace in the middle. So you notice that this thing is naked right now. That's why I'm not going to lace it up all the way because I got to put a finish on it. Now they recommend that you don't use an oil finish or anything like that because it takes too long to off gas to get the chemicals out. So I actually use Watco Danish oil, which has a accelerator in it which helps it dry. But you can use polyurethane, anything you want like that, as long as it's completely off gassed. In other words, you can't smell anything. There's no dampness to it. It's fine to donate then. And actually, you need to contact them at Beads of Courage before you donate this, because they will put you in touch with either a local agency that will accept it, or they will put you in touch with some place where you can ship it to. But you got to go through them to get this done. Now, if you notice, my football is standing at a jaunty little angle, and that's because one thing I did do is I turned a Purple Heart T for it, and I did that because I needed a way to display it. You can actually go buy a regular tee and put your football in it. You just want to make sure that whatever you build is stable enough that it will hold the football up once it has a bunch of beads in it, because that could get pretty heavy. And on the lacing, by the way, all you do at the very end is you tie a knot down there in the bottom right there, and then you just nip this off and you're done. But anyway, I hope you liked our little project on how to make a box, a football box for Beads of Courage, and they're a wonderful organization, and I hope you support them. Also, check out Carl Jacobson's video once he gets it online. I can't wait to see what he comes up with for Beads of Courage. Anyway, until the next time on Wood Turning, keep turning.
The American Beauty Tim uses was made by Robust Tools. All our lathes have a 7-year warranty. Our tool wrists feature a hardened rod on top. Lots of sizes to fit your lathe. Robust, because the making matters.
Thompson Lathe Tools. Welcome to a new level of professional wood turning tools. Made by a wood turner for wood turners.